Hi everyone, my name is Kat, or the Fair Librarian, and welcome back to a new video. Today I will be sharing my summer TBR, which will span from June to 2/3 through September. That might seem like a very random period of time, but my exams start in June and the new academic year starts the 20th of September. So just I have like the time between is going to be this TBR. So that means I have to put in some easier reads whilst I have exams, and then during the summer when I have not a lot to do, I can do the more intimidating, more longer books, etc. So I try to make it a varied list. This list is not set in stone. I can always decide to read other things. It's just giving me a guide. So let's get into it. I tried to limit myself to 30 books, but if I have multiple books in the same series, it counts like as one in total. It made sense in my head. So the first series on this list is the Empire trilogy by Raymond E. Feist and Jenny Wirtz, starting with A Daughter of the Empire, then Servant of the Empire, and lastly Mistress of the Empire. I don't know a lot about this story. I believe it's Japanese inspired, ? But Alan over at Library of Alexandria is hosting a read along for this series. So they'll be reading the first book in July, the second book in August, and the third book in September. I will be traveling throughout most of July, so I don't think I will be able to read the first book then. So I'll be reading the first two in August and then the third in September. I hope, because I can never keep up with read-alongs, but that's the goal, at least. As I said, I don't know a ton about it. I know it's a bit of an older fantasy series, but I'm curious. So that's the first one. Second one is another commitment. I am going to buddy read Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett with Kirsten over at Reading Nymph. It's a really long historical fiction, and we're both a little intimidated by it, and we thought, you know what, a buddy read is a great way to break the intimidatingness. I don't know if that's a word. So that's what we're going to do. It's about people building a cathedral, I believe, in medieval times. I don't know, it seems fun. And then the third and final commitment that I have is I'm going to be buddy reading Spare by Prince Harry with an IRL friend. Part of it is for the meme, but also I think this could be like genuinely a very interesting book. Recently there is a documentary made about a Belgian prince who was also the spare, and I don't know, I think it's really fun to like compare the two and see how that sort of impacts you, because there are a lot of common things between Prince Harry and Prince Law, with Belgian prince, which they also see in other royal families with the one that's not the heir. So I think it could be very interesting, genuinely. So those are my commitments. Then let's get into some book I definitely would like to get to. First of all, I have The Priory of the Orange Tree. a friend gifted me this for my birthday because my friend said that she was reading it and I said I was interested in it. And she knew I didn't own a copy, so she gave me one. It's pretty big. But as I said, I'm going to be traveling in June. And I have a 9-hour flight there and a 9-hour flight back. I probably won't be reading the entire time, but I will have a lot of time that I could potentially spend reading this book. So I've been saving this for then. That way I only have to take one book with me. I will take my e-reader so I can have other books if need be, but this will be my primary read then because I don't know how much reading I will get done on that trip. This is an adult high epic fantasy. It is sapphic, I believe. It has dragons. It's a standalone, which is really nice. Well, there's a prequel, but you don't have to read it. It has been a standalone for years. So I'm very excited about this. I've heard great things, and I can't wait. Next, I have a book that I've been putting off for ages, and that is The Blade Itself by Jo Abercrombie. Recently, my friend Tori over at Tori Talks read the series, and she has spoilery reading vlogs up on her channel, and I want to be able to watch them. So I need to read this first. So maybe that was like the push that I needed to finally get to it. But I'm really curious what all the hype is about, what I feel. Also, I heard Leanna over at Leanna's library do like a fan casting where she cast Sam Claflin as Glocta, and I love Sam Claflin, so that has made me even more excited. Next, I have another very intimidating one, and that is Anathem by Neil Stevenson. This, okay, first of all, is ridiculously long. Like, if you think Prairie the Orange Tree is long, Anathem is longer. And I've heard that it's like very philosophical and dense. And I'm a little scared. But you know what? I'm gonna give it a go. We'll see how it goes. I believe this is about monasteries, and then some open their doors every year and others every like 10 years, every 100 years, every 1,000 years. And they do inventions, and so when the ones that open there every year is like, that's not huge innovations because they only had a year, but like when the ones who open their doors every 1,000 years do that, like they've had 1,000 years to invent things and to come up with things. So that's always a huge event. And I believe that the novel takes place when they do open their doors, like all of them at the same time. So I think it'll be interesting. I've heard people really like it, but I'm a little intimidated. Okay, number 7 is one that is not nearly as intimidating. It's a contemporary romance, and It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I read Hook, Line, and Sinker last summer, and I really enjoyed it. That's actually the second book. It Happened One Summer is the first book, but it's a romance series. You can read them out of order. It's like inspired by Schitt's Creek, I believe. And it's about this rich and famous Hollywood woman who has to go to a small town, and she hates it. Her stepdad forces her to go there, and then she falls in love with this fisherman, and they have a bit of a grumpy sunshine romance, and you know, just all the good stuff. Then I have Shelter Mountain by Robin Carr, which is the companion to Virgin River. I read that in January and I was really surprised by it. Like at the beginning, I was a bit hesitant and I wasn't liking it as much, but by the end, I loved that book. And so I want to continue on in the series. And so the next one is Shelter Mountain. It's like a series of women's fiction-y contemporary books set in a small town called Virgin River. And in this book, I think it is Preacher who's going to have his romance, who runs the local pub with Jack, who was the male lead in the first book. So I'm really excited. I might also read the third book. I don't know, but I definitely want to get to the second one. Then I have a very hard-hitting nonfiction, which is The Power of Women by Denis Mukwege. Denis Mukwege is a Congolese doctor, and if you don't know, in East Congo there's this huge war going on for decades, and it's the biggest conflict in the world since World War II. And especially women are victims of it in very specific ways. And so Denis Mukwege has a hospital there where he specializes in women's care after they've been attacked. I've seen a documentary where he was also interviewed, and the hospital was also visited, and was really hard to watch. So I think this book will also be really hard to read as well. But I think it's a very important read. I want to try. Then number 10 is it's not really a commitment, but well, it is Days of the Deer by Liliana Bullock. This is an epic fantasy written by an Argentinian author. She's sometimes called the Tolkien of South America. And Angela over at Literature Science Alliance is on the hunt for South American inspired fantasy. And I said, hey, this exists. I haven't read it, but you could read it. But it's originally written in Spanish, and only the first book in the series has been translated to English. So she asked, like, hey, do you know if it can be read as a standalone? Because I don't want to be stuck with a cliffhanger that's never going to be resolved. So I thought it was already on my maybe list, like my mental maybe list for the summer. So I thought I'll read it this summer and I'll get back to you. So I want to do that because they have all been translated to Dutch, so I can finish up the series if I want to, and I can let her know if she can start it, even though the entire series isn't translated. I hate when that happens. I have quite a few series actually that I haven't finished because they just stopped translating mid-series, and I don't want to have to switch language in the middle of a series. So I just don't finish them. And I kind of hate it. But well. So those were all the books that I definitely wanted to get to. Now we get into more MBR territory, which is definitely the longest list. So first I have Song of Silver, Flame Like Night by Amélie Wenzhou. It's I believe it's YA, but I'm not sure, Asian-inspired fantasy. So it's about a land that has been colonized, and like the magic of that land is forbidden now, and the main character has to deal with that, I guess. I don't know. But it sounds fun, and I want to give it a try. Then number 12 is going to be a reread for me, and that is The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan, which is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I wanted to reread the entire Percy Jackson series and then Heroes of Olympus so I can dive into the Trials of Apollo, because I haven't read any of those. And I did, and I read all of Percy Jackson. And like, I read the last Percy Jackson book last summer, and then I never continued, so I want to pick that back up. So I want to read The Lost Hero, and probably also The Son of Neptune. I love these books. They're very dear to my heart, and I want to continue on in the series. Then I have another middle grade series, in fact, and that is the Adventures on a Train series, more specifically the second and third book, which are Kidnap on the California Comet and Murder on the Safari Star. This is about kids solving mysteries on trains, and they're really fun, and yes, they're predictable. At least the first one was. I've only read one. Yes, it was predictable, but it was just a blast and a really quick read as well. Just a lot of fun. So I want to continue on in the series. And these are also perfect for when I have exams, because they're middle grade. They're really not that hard to read. So yeah. Then the next book is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This is a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy. It's your very typical quest story from what I hear, except just Middle Eastern inspired setting. It's a debut, and I've heard really good things about this book. So yeah, I'm excited. I even bought a copy, like that says something. So I would like to read this in the summer. And next I have War and Turpentine by Stefan Hertmans. This is my mom's favorite book of all time, and she has been telling me to read it for so long, and I just have not. This book is about the author's grandfather. So the author just tells his grandfather's story. You know, like he lived through the war and how he wanted to be a painter, and she said it's really nice and really beautiful. So I wanna give it a try. If only so my mom can finally stop forcing me to read it. Then I have a picture book, which is The Unicorn That Said No, which is about a unicorn that says no. And what more do you need to know? It sounds so cute, and I want to read it. In English, the pun in the title is not kept because it's originally written in German, and there the title is a pun because the German word for unicorn is Einhorn, and then the German word for no is nine, and so if you mush them together you get Neinhorn. So it's pun, but the pun is there in English, which is a little sad. Number 17 is Eeny Meeny by M.J. Arledge, which is the first book in the Helen Grace series, which is a mystery thriller series. I believe it's like a lot of serial killers. That's the type of vibe we're going for. This first book is a case where there's always two people who get kidnapped, and then they're each given a gun, and they say, okay, the one who shoots the other can go. So it's never reported because the ones who are released don't want to admit that they've killed someone. So it's very hard to find any leads in the case, and I don't know, it sounds intriguing. This series is really popular where I live, like outside of the Bookternet, and I want to see what hype is about. Next up, I have The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, another mystery thriller. This is about a woman who goes on a cruise, and there she meets this other woman who's staying in Cabin 10. But then this woman gets murdered, and so she tries to tell people like, hey, this woman disappeared, I think she's murdered. And everyone's like, what do you mean? There is no woman in Cabin 10. It's been empty since we left. So very intriguing premise. I want to give it a go. I've also heard really good things about Ruth Ware as an author, so I want to try her books. Next, I have My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is a literary fiction about grooming, like about a girl who gets a relationship with her teacher, and then many years later she looks back at it, and I think it's really interesting. I've heard good things. Recently, someone I follow, his channel is author J. Creighton Smith, did a review for it, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna read it now. So I don't know, I think this will be a hard read, but I've heard really good things about it, so I'm kind of excited. Then I have Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is the short story collection that accompanies the Lunar Chronicles, which I've really loved. And so I want to read everything that Marissa Meyer has ever written because I've loved everything I've read by her. So if I read this and I've finished that series, and I have 2 series left at this point, so I have her Renegades series, and I have Gilded, and whatever the sequel is called. I don't know if this is going to feature the same characters as the Lunar Chronicles, or is it going to be set in the same world, or a bit of a mixture of both. But I think it's going to be lovely. Then I have The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn, which is the second book in the Bridgerton series. I recently read the first one and I fell in love. So I'd love to continue on in the series. This is the second book. I may read the third book. I may finish out the series. Who knows? They're very readable, very bingeable as well. The Viscount Who Loved Me is Anthony's story, I believe. I really liked the dynamic between Anthony and Daphne in the first book, so I hope that we get a little bit more of that. And just the sibling dynamics in general are great in the series, or at least in the first book. I don't know about the rest of the series, but I assume they are. So yeah, it's gonna be great. Next, I have In Stürmischen Zeiten, which is a book that's in German, but there's no English translation out currently. It is set in 1870, and it's about a girl who comes to work as a maid on this estate that has a large vineyard, and there's some romance. You know, just your usual things. Just, you know, feel good time. Then I have The Dragon's Promise by Elizabeth Lim. This is the sequel to Six Crimson Cranes, which I read in April and I loved it. And I want to know how the story continues. Like, the first book had a decent enough ending, like it's not a cliffhanger or anything, but I just want to be in this world. The first book is a Wild Swans retelling about this girl who's a princess, and her stepmother changes her brothers into cranes, and she can't talk because for every word that she speaks, one of her brothers dies, and she has to try and find a way to break this curse. Oh, and she has a bowl on her head, which she can't take off. That's also a detail that is slightly significant. And I loved it. I loved how the retelling element was done. I loved how, like, the author leaned into tropes just long enough and then flipped them on their head. And I just loved the world itself. And I want to be there again. So I'm going to read the second book this summer. Next, I have Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This is a contemporary romance. It's about two people who always spend their summers at a lake and then they fall in love with each other, and it's told over the course of several summers. I just think it's gonna be a very fun time to like a bit nostalgia. So yeah. Then I have A Century of Wisdom by Caroline Stoisinger and Alice Hertzommer, which is a like the true story of Alice Hertzommer, who was at the time of writing this book the oldest still surviving Holocaust survivor. I don't know if she's still alive, but she was in a camp, Theresienstadt, which is a bit of an atypical camp because it was sort of the PR camp for the Nazis, where like they show the rest of the world like, hey, look how we're treating these people. It's not like, it's pretty good. So the conditions there were still bad, but not as bad as in the other camps. And there were a lot of artists there and a lot of intellectuals there, so a lot of art happening there and stuff. So I think it'll be a very interesting, like a different look than what we usually get. So I think this will be very interesting. This was also a recommendation from my mom. She really loves this book and she thinks I would like it too. Next up, I have Idol by Louise O'Neill, which is about a young woman who is very famous. She has millions of followers, like an idol, like a superstar. And one day she decides to write an essay about her sexual awakening with her female best friend many years earlier. And it goes viral as expected. But the female friend gets in touch and says, hey, this is not at all how I remember it. And so they sort of have a thing of like, whose truth is gonna end up being the truth, who's going to be believed, etc. I've not heard a ton about this book, but it sounds very interesting, so I want to give it a go. And then I have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which is a new adult fantasy romance with dragons. I don't know a lot more than that, but it's been everywhere. So I'm excited. That's gonna be my audiobook. I don't listen to a ton of audiobooks, but I try to put always one audiobook of my seasonal TBRs in case I want to listen to an audiobook, and this is my audiobook for this TBR. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Then I have Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, which is a middle grade magic school type series with a black main character. I've heard nothing but great things about this. So we'll see how it goes. Then I have a Greek myth retelling, which is Daughters of Sparta by Claire Haywood. It's about Helena and Clytemnestra. I really like Clytemnestra and on the whole tragedy cycle that happens with her. So I wanna see. I don't care a ton about Helena. She's like whatever. But I'm curious. I'm also a little nervous because up until this day, I've never really liked a Greek myth retelling. So I'm fingers crossed that this is gonna end up well. But I want to love them because I'm in university studying Latin and ancient Greek, and so I want to love them, but I just don't. So I'm gonna give this one a try. I've heard some good things about it, so maybe I've just picked up the wrong ones up until now, and all the others that I try are gonna be awesome. Let's hope. And then I have Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is the first book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, which is a series of contemporary romances written by Talia Hibbert. These were very popular when they came out. And like everyone I've seen them read has loved them. So I wanna give them a try, and they've recently been translated to Dutch, so it's the perfect time to read them. And I believe that's the end of my list. Did I not put Astrid Parker on here? Let's rectify. Last minute addition to the list. I realized I didn't put this book on it. Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, which is a contemporary romance with some house renovation going on. It is a sapphic romance, and it is the companion to Delilah Green Doesn't Care, which I haven't read, but romance series tend to be, like, normally you can read romance series out of order, and I've asked, and like the only spoiler you get is like the fact that this book exists in the first place. But whether I read Delilah Green first or not, I know that this book exists, so I won't really get spoiled. Besides, romance books are not as spoiler sensitive, or at least I'm not as spoiler sensitive for romance books as for other genres. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a try. I heard it's quite steamy. I don't need a ton of steam. Like, I don't necessarily mind steam, but I also don't need it. So yeah, but I'm very excited about this one. So those were the 30 plus 1 books that I am going to read this summer. As I said, this can change, but yeah, have you read any of these books? Let me know. Also, tell me what book you're most excited to read in the comments. I would love to know. And I think that'll be the video. So I'll see you next time. Bye.